Okay, before. Oh, there we go.
And we're
uh,
live.
yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, for another exciting edition of Pompously Political, the podcast that's sometimes a train wreck, sometimes a little bit organized. This time we're a little bit more organized than normal. As one of your gallant co-hosts, Jimmy, joined with my co-host.
Scott.
Woohoo!
Am I as gallant as you are, or are you more gallant?
We are gallant together as we crusade our ways. We trudge our way through the news to pick up little tiny tidbits to give you guys, and we have a lot to talk about, man. We got
We
some,
don't really have any tiny tidbits this week. They're all major,
yeah, well,
major things.
yeah, major tidbits, but still, like, man, SCOTUS first of all, unbelievable week for the Supreme Court of the United States.
Oh, you're just going in. Like we're
Yes.
gonna hit the big one.
Oh, well, because it's so meaty, because there's so much to it, man. There's so many parts to this that it's mind-boggling. First of all, if you don't, if for those that are unaware of, if you've been like I don't know, like on a mountain with no phone reception, or in an Amish village somewhere, desperately trying to get back to your family, uh, the SCOTUS ruled in two major landmark rulings.
Back to
First,
back. One was Thursday, one was Friday. Like they
yeah,
were on it.
bam, and they were enough time to go off and enjoy a little bit of the summer, right? Uh, First off, being subsidies, the subsidies provision in the legislation known as Obamacare. It was taken to court. The opponents to Obamacare have been dropping lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, trying to dismantle this law any way as possible. This is one of those cases that was then brought to the Supreme Court. It also sets precedent to any future cases that would then occur in reference to Obamacare. So it was upheld. That provision within the Obamacare was upheld. Um, and then, of course, the major one, if you've seen a lot of rainbow filters on Facebook, then you're probably aware of it, was the landmark ruling in favor of same-sex marriage, or as us liberals like to call, just marriage. So, what are your thoughts, Scott? That's the opening to this bag of this can of worms that'll be a large.
There's a lot I don't even know where to begin. We'll go back to Obamacare because that's been
Cool. I'm fine.
the story, I guess.
I'm in a fluid sort of mood, man. I'm willing to go with the flow. So,
Bounce back and forth. Um, so when this isn't the first time that a provision of Obamacare has been brought up before the Supreme Court, and I think every single time it's happened, Supreme Court has voted in favor of Obamacare.
right.
That this is a good thing. It is constitutional. It is the law of the land. It's what needs to happen. And as we've gone through this, you have those diehard Republicans that are like, well, we'll find another way to do it. We'll find another way to kill it.
Right, right. They
And
they go and find like five more lawyers that are like, "Hey man, maybe we can try this." So they're
yeah,
spending more money than they're actually like accomplishing anything. So
yeah. And after the latest one, which was earlier in the year, I don't remember exactly what they had upheld. Um, After that one, there was a good majority of the Republicans who had vowed to fight it that were like, all right, we get it. We're not going to win. So let's move on to other things because we're wasting resources. So a lot of the, I guess, you say controversy around it died because they were just like, all right, we lost.
right,
But
that was
you still have people coming out after this one, the four or five craziest of the crazies that are like, we're going to fight this till we die. We'll just keep bringing it up. Like, is there a point when the Supreme Court can just be like, look, we don't want to hear anything else about Obamacare. If you bring it up to us, we're just going to kick it back. We're not even going to read it. We're
well.
done.
That's what this one set precedent for because the last one that actually was brought up to Supreme Court was the portion in the provision about the individual mandate. Could they in fact penalize people for not getting health care? They ended up finding the legality behind it was the ability to monitor commerce, I believe is what it was. And so we had that come up, And then yeah, everybody was pretty deflated and defeated on the Republican side. And then of course, then this they keep dropping cases, and this is the new one. So any more cases that really come out, again, the Supreme Court could toss out or just rule in favor of, because they're beating a dead horse at this point.
Mm.
Yeah, they've, what is it, 46 to 50 times that it was brought up through Congress to try to dismantle it in there as well. So I mean, they've tried every attempt that they possibly could. They threatened to sue the president, sue the administration because of Obamacare.
Not sure that would work.
Right, they were gonna they threatened litigation. John Boehner and the Funky Bunch, if you want to call them, in Congress were like, hey man, we think we could have grounds to sue you on. And Obama was like, okay, I don't really give a fuck anymore. Probably said the N-word and dropped the mic.
It's like,
the president he is now. So
if you noticed, we have had a streak of mind-boggling events out of Congress, and it's all happened since we did that massive Republican shift in the last election, where Republicans took over like 80% of the seats or some ridiculous amount. The ones that were up, they claimed 80% of them, took the majority in all of it. And then we start seeing things like, we're going to sue the president, we're going to bring foreign leaders to speak in front of our in front of the House, we're going to sorry, we're going to write letters that are passively aggressive to foreign leaders that bypass the president. Well, you wanted Republicans, and this is what you got, the craziest of the crazy, and they're... What have they done that was productive? They've done nothing but waste time. 50 attempts at dismantling Obamacare, more attempts going through the Supreme Court, with this last one being the latest. What are the Republicans doing that warrant them getting elected back into that office again and again and again? Because I'm not seeing anything.
Right. Even Mitch McConnell, of course, who I think he took over.
Turtle.
Right, yeah, Turtle guy. Hey, I think this is how it goes. I say. But anyway, so that guy, he vowed. He said that there would be a historical shift in Congress, that this gridlock would be destroyed and so many things would get done. And I'm pretty sure he failed by like just epic proportions with that, because nothing. They don't have enough votes to break a veto, and they kind of need that in order to do a lot of things, because once it gets through Congress, all the president has to say is, hey man, I got the power to veto. And the only way that can be overturned is if you have a 5-4 majority or something like that. I can't remember.
Oh, I have no idea. That's your area, man. I don't care about that crap.
Anyways, you have to have enough votes within Congress to overturn a veto. And then at that point, then the president is basically, there's nothing really he can do at that point. It's sort of that checks and balance sort of thing of like, president, the executive branch can't have too much authority over the, Anyways, legislative.
Yeah.
I lost my thought there for a second. I was going to say judicial, and I'm like, that's the Supreme Court, and they're kind of it's funny to me that the group of people that are just bitching and moaning about the constitutionality of everything, that the Constitution is not a living document, therefore cannot be amended, are the ones that are shitting the bed when it comes to supporting the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court are the ones that are authorities. They're like the oracles of Delphi that freaking Leonidas had to climb a mountain for just to get the declaration of war.
Speaking of the Supreme Court,
okay,
did you read any of the dissenting opinions that came out, since each justice that voted in opposition to the majority wrote their own dissent in addition to the, big dissent? Right,
which it's kind of shocking that Scalia, is the craziest one of them all.
That's the ones that I read. That dude has long since past his effective years. Retirement would be in order. Some of the things that he put, like he literally put one of them was like, really? that's how we're gonna do it now.
Right.
This dude's like 80 years old. You're one of the top lawyers in the country, and that's it's not really professional speak.
Yeah. The thing is, Republicans want to support the the Supreme Court when it's in favor of them. And then now we have people like Ted Cruz. I think Ted Cruz was the one that said it. Maybe Rick Santorum, one of those two. They're both crazy in my books that are almost like the same person, just different hair and Ted Cruz has a slightly bigger nose, I guess. But the thing about it is that they were talking about uh, dismantling the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I saw
Like
that.
getting rid of it. I'm like, okay, so pretty much if anything is contrary to your Republican ideals, right, which the Supreme Court is supposed to be a non-political entity. It's not supposed to be Republican nor Democrat. That's why they have Republican members that seat it, and they have Democrats that sit on it. So it's supposed to be a non-biased sort of thing. That's
Yeah.
why even though we know Justice Scalia is a Republican, he doesn't go Republican Supreme Court Justice Scalia. He just says Supreme Court Justice Scalia. So yeah,
And even some of his comments were to the effect of, well, we just don't like something anymore, so we're just going to run it up the flagpole until it gets to Supreme Court and let us decide. Why are we the ones that have to make all these decisions? Like,
right.
it was just childish. You could tell he was upset that he lost when he wrote it. Like, that's why you shouldn't write anything out of anger, because you're going to sound like a retard, and you're going to say a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense.
Right. And man, was it Justice Roberts wrote one who basically said that this now opens the door for discriminating against Christians or Christianity, which was weird. I had this conversation today in regards to this. People were freaking out about this particularly with the gay marriage ruling, that they're like, oh my God, like now my Christian rights are being infringed upon. And I'm like, no, they're not. Your Christian, no, nobody is taking any rights away from you. We're just adding the rights of another demographic into the table. Nobody's forcing your church to perform a gay marriage. Nobody's forcing the congregation to get gay married even. Nobody's
Not that that would be a bad idea.
right. But the thing about it is that they're freaking out. Like, no, there's not just like particularly with the Mormons here. There's not a brigade of gay people now in line at the temple to get married in the temple. No, that's not what's happening. They go to the the magistrate or whatever to get married locally.
Wait, when did we move from Obamacare back to gay marriage?
I kind of yeah. My brain.
It was going, and then it just kind of dawned on me. I was like, wait, we were talking about Obamacare.
Yeah, my brain works in mysterious ways sometimes, Scott. But well, because the letters of dissent in particular were for the gay marriage vote. I thought the ones I
Well,
read.
there was also a good handful of them from the Obamacare, if I remember correctly, because I want to say like there was a lot of dissenting letters. Which, if anybody doesn't know, the process through the Supreme Court is whenever a opinion is given, the majority opinion is given that says why it won, and then typically there is a dissenting opinion which explains why they voted against it.
Right.
It's not typical that every dissenting vote writes their own opinion why they don't agree with it, which is just another example of how our democracy, the republic, is changing, and not necessarily for the better.
Should we use the word that we use so frequently as pompous? How pompous it must be to be a conservative justice that now has to throw their 2 cents on every single thing that they disagree with now.
Yeah, and it's just another product of the everybody gets an opinion, everybody gets a trophy society.
Right.
There's no need for all the justices to release their own opinions on this. If they can't form their thoughts into a coherent collective dissent, then are they not capable of holding that position? I mean, that should be a pretty easy task in comparison to combing through 2 centuries of legal documents and precedents, and determining the legality of something.
Right.
Once you get done doing that, sitting down with the 3 other people that voted on your side and stating why you guys voted against it should be pretty easy. Like why are we not able to do that? And again, it goes back to what I was saying. It's this damn entitlement mentality. Everybody gets an opinion. Everybody gets to get heard.
Well, in just now for the people out there, like if you were a person that didn't really, probably listen to politics every once in a while, but wasn't like a political nerd that just followed stuff like this. Up until recently, how many people really knew the individual names of Supreme Court justices? Probably not a lot. You know what I
I
mean?
know most of the last names. I don't know the full names.
Right. Well, we consider ourselves quote unquote political nerds in the sense that we follow a little bit more than the average person. But I mean now, like I've met people that don't even know like the legislative process. They don't even know like the difference between a vote and a referendum and and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And they know the names of the Supreme Court justice because they're so out there now. You have Scalia that's everybody knows Scalia because he's out there vocal talking about how much he hates all this stuff. Then everybody knows who Ruth Bader Ginsburg is because she's not willing she will lay the smackdown on you for her own principles. That lady is tremendous. She's probably too old to be a Supreme Court justice by now, but you know what I mean.
I've never
She's
really looked into the, I guess, individual ones. Of course, we know Sotomayor because all the controversy whenever she was trying to get appointed. But I said I know the names. I know the Scalia because he's just a moron. I know, Roberts and Ginsburg, and Thomas.
Yeah. What made Robert stand out was he was the hinge vote or the vote that basically swayed everything in favor of the last Obamacare ruling. He actually agreed that it would. He didn't agree that we should have the individual mandate, but in the constitutionality of the mandate that they were able to regulate commerce. And
Hmm.
he's the vote, and essentially Scalia was like, "You asshole, you voted with the enemy," sort of thing. That was Scalia's just like, "I thought we were friends," and then Ruth Bader Ginsburg's like, "Hey, come here, Roberts, want to go to dinner together?" Like it was like a shift. And so that's how he kind of got known. And then Justice Thomas, he's kind of a weird particular case because he invoked slavery. Again, I'm tending to jump around, but he invoked slavery in his dissent with the same-sex marriage ruling. Like
I don't think I read that one.
yeah, it is weird. It's a weird sort of thing that they hear his like. In my opinion, wouldn't that then like if you were to compare slavery or civil rights or equate it to the same-sex marriage ruling and LGBTQ rights, wouldn't that work against you? Like, how did he spin that? You know what I mean? It's weird.
I feel like if in 50 years we have another major issue that's being decided as far as equality. Let's make all Muslims. We can do Muslim marriages now because for some reason that was, just something absurd like that. And then to have one of the justices that's like a Liberace up there that invokes the same-sex marriage thing, uh, you know, and why he didn't vote for it. It's like it's like let's point out the obvious. You're a black guy playing the slavery thing, and part of your excuse of why you don't want to give equality.
Right.
I'm I'd be curious to read that because I don't see a logical flow through that where at the end of the conversation I go, I kind of see what you're saying.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even to the extent, uh, Justice Roberts threw out there that this now opens the door for an attack on Christianity and so forth. Like
Well,
even
good,
yeah,
good, let it.
even then he threw in some valid points. He threw in some portions of what he was saying that makes sense. And then again, Scalia stating, "Why is this even at our level? This should be a state's issue," sort of thing.
Yeah.
Why is it then brought to us to now remedy the issue. And the problem with it was that, like, take for instance my state, the state Supreme Court uh, overturned a ban on same-sex marriage in the state of Idaho. Well, then Governor Otter, Butch Otter, good old asshole and a half, decided to spend taxpayer dollars to then get a stay on that ruling, and then try and fight it uh, elsewhere. He's trying to change the law essentially. Change.
Well, you live in a Mormon state, so.
Yeah. Which he's not even Mormon. Butch Otter's not even Mormon. He
Yeah,
says,
but the people that put him in office are.
oh, that's true. That's true. Farmers and Mormons. That's typically what votes out here. If you were to look at the like the map of how our state votes, you would see a sea of red with little tiny pockets of you know, blue in there, like around my town of Pocatello, which we have a college, and then also around Boise. You would then see, can't really see my hand in the camera, but this is Boise over here, and this is Pocatello, and so these are little pockets of blue in a big giant sea of red. That's how my state votes. So even though the intelligent people, the educated people within the state are trying to vote Democrat, it's really difficult to get somebody that's Democrat in office. I think the last one we had was like maybe early 90s. I can't remember. So, yeah, man. Any further thoughts on the Obamacare?
Well, between Obamacare and gay marriage, I mean that's really been the big issues for a while now. I mean, 2-3 years. That's been consistent headlines, and now that those issues are over, what are we moving on to? Like, what's the next
immigration.
great social debate? Immigration, that's a great one.
Yeah, I think immigration is next on the table of things that need to be addressed. That and I think man, what that is a good question. Climate, man. Like I said, my state right now of Idaho, we're roasting. This is a record hot summer for my state, and I don't even want to walk outside. I feel like I'm in Iraq again. It's so hot.
Oh, that's miserable.
Yeah. I feel like I need to strap like 4 CamelBaks on my back just to go check the mail. Um, so, but I think yeah, climate change, trying to get some meaningful legislation there as far as getting emissions down by 30%, uh, allowing the EPA to operate. Was it Jim Imhoff was trying uh, to defund climate change research and natural science research. So yeah, so I think that's a big battle, and then of course immigration, like I said. Those are the two next ones.
With um, climate change, and this is completely off topic, it's random. It's something that's been bugging me that I just haven't looked up. So I'm going to ask you just in case you know. We pull trillions of gallons of crude oil out of the earth, right? Just millions and millions of barrels every single day.
Yeah.
And over the last 100 years we've been doing it, trillions of gallons of barrels of crude oil.
Worldwide, not just the United States, but worldwide.
Right. Yeah. Worldwide, looking at the whole Earth.
Right.
What have we done to the Earth? What purpose was that serving? Those gallons, those trillions of gallons, were not sitting under the surface for no reason, right? What?
Yeah. You know what? I don't know. I don't know on that. But the other thing is that again, it is not an unlimited resource. So imagine. Let's change this context for those people that are trying to understand. Okay, so let's say that you have a glass that's about, let's go with the glass is half full sort of thing. You have a glass that's half full of water, right? And you need to walk 10 blocks, and it's 100-degree weather outside, right? You're going to want to ration that water to last as long as you can. And I feel that with these fossil fuels is we are not treating it like it's a glass half full. We're treating it like it's an abundant resource that's going to be with us the entire time we're walking. That's not the case. Eventually, that's going to dry up. That oil is going to dry up. Those fossil fuels, coal, there will be so much coal. Anybody that has a computer or a video game system that can play Minecraft knows that eventually you will run out of coal in that game. That's the way the world works. Okay. So, with that being said, wouldn't it be beneficial and what's the word I'm looking for? Profitable. Yes, that's how Republicans talk. Profitable. Would it be more profitable to invest in a renewable resource because then you would continuously have that resource? There would be no end to that resource, as opposed to okay, you'll get rich off of coal for a little while, but then once the reserves of coal dry out, we don't have any more coal or we don't have any more oil, then what's left to make money on? Nothing.
Well, it's
And
not even so much that. A lot of the talk around what happens when we run out of crude oil is what do we do? Like what? How are we going to get around? How are we going to travel or how are we going to provide electricity when we run out of all these resources? What's going to happen to the Earth when we run out of all of these resources? I think that should be the more prominent question because you can't. I want to say that I read something that said we're experiencing a record amount of earthquakes.
yeah, that's in reference to fracking in the Midwest. I believe it's in Oklahoma.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about all over the world, like especially with the one in Nepal a couple months ago. I mean, just constant earthquakes going on. I can't help but think that that's somehow linked. That
Yeah.
maybe it's an incredibly uninformed position, but maybe the oil is acting as a lubricant for the plates, made them shift a little bit smoother. Now we're taking all that lubricant out, so they're grinding the. I don't know, but
We're not scientists. That's what we're trying to say. So if you are a scientist and would like to put your input in there, sure, maybe I work at a college now. Maybe I'll go find the geology department and go, my friend Scott has a question. What's oil used for? But then on top of that, man, like, yeah, who knows? That's a great question. I mean, for us non-scientific people, I mean, of course, the other thing is, silly Scott, don't you know those earthquakes over in Nepal and stuff? That's just God's wrath for gay marriage. That's what that is, Scott.
should
We
have
don't
seen that one coming. I'm sorry.
we don't need science. We just need God. Um, so
So we've talked about like I said, what are some of the major issues that we're going to face? Immigration, climate change, what happens when all the oil's gone, things like that. Not on that list, but people are wanting to put it on that list. Is why are we still flying the Confederate flag?
ooh, I think we're on opposing sides of this, judging by your tone, sir. This might be exciting. Um, okay, who wants to take the lead here? Are we gonna do
I'll
the
take the lead. I don't think we're on opposing sides of this at all.
okay?
Um,
All
I
right.
don't
I
think.
was gonna do the ceremonial head nod, and then okay, I'll hear your position out before we take the gloves off. So
I don't think it's as big of an issue as we're making it out to be. I think it's sensational. Media sensationalization, whatever the word is, to kind of distract from some of the more serious issues like the gay marriage, the Obamacare, Greece falling into the sea financially. Um,
and we're talking the country, not another form of an oily substance. So,
right, right. Um, it's I've never really sat and thought. I've always kind of just accepted the Confederate flag as a symbol of a redneck. If you fly a Confederate flag, you're a redneck, and more power to you, whatever. But to look at what it actually means, and I read several articles on this over the last week. One of them contained, I guess, it was partial quotes. It was partial letters of secession from the United States, where the leaders of the Confederacy spelled out in no unspecific terms. I mean, they were right on the money, pinpoint. We don't want to give up our slaves. You're going to kill us financially if we have to give up our slaves. We're not giving up our slaves. So in turn, that becomes You know, they succeed. They rebel against the country. They're traitors at that point. And yet, for some reason, the flag was still allowed to fly. While at the same time, we're standing back and watching these morons burn our flag. Because, the Confederate flag is not my flag. I live in a southern state. That's not my flag. The American flag is my flag. The Confederate flag, I have to agree, is the flag of traitors. And, it symbolizes the desire for slavery. I can't support it. But it's just amazing to me that it's still being flown like it is. It's still it's become such a big issue, and people are getting so upset about it, even though they're clearly ignorant of what the history of it is.
Well, so you surprised me. You surprised me, Scott. We are somewhat on the same side with it, so that's great. What you're referring to, and it's a huge, huge deal. This whole discussion. Believe it or not, was I had to look up his name because I couldn't remember his name, but it was done by the Vice President of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, and he did it March 21st in 1861, and it's called the Cornerstone Speech, and it was essentially, to sum it up, that they wanted to maintain blacks as subordinates to the superior white race. That essentially it added that larger race-based element to the discussion. Of course, a lot of people think that the Civil War was all about slavery. No, it was about a lot of things. But the Cornerstone Speech certainly solidified that slavery and race-based policy was at the foundation of the Confederacy.
Right, and let me throw some clarification in here, because there is an argument that I've had made to me several times by people, especially from the South. That at the time I was like, oh man, that sounds really logical. But then when you look into it, you're like, no, that's dumb. And that argument is that the South was fighting for the rights of slaves. They were fighting to make them equals. And where they get that from is that the big thing with the slavery was that at the time, determining, I want to say electoral college votes or seats in Congress, was based on, it's always been based on your population, but slaves were only counted as 2/3 of a person. So they were fighting to have the slaves recognized as one person so that they got more of a say in Congress in the way that the country actually ran. That should not ever be confused with they were fighting for equal rights for slaves. They had no intention of giving up slaves. They had no intention of giving them equal rights and making them landowning citizens and giving them all the stuff that they eventually had to fight for to get anyways. They wanted more say in Congress so that they could do more of what they wanted without northern liberal interference.
Right. And there's a lot of stuff that comes out after that. The Union itself is no stranger to race-based policies. In fact, after the Civil War, with everybody's heard of the 40 acres and a mule. The United States government essentially nixed that idea and then gave that land back to. It basically said that the government didn't have the right to take away the white slave owners' land and give it to blacks to farm agriculture. So they gave it back to the white owners and then had the blacks rent it off of them, and they had to pay like a rent or a shareholder fee or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm probably not as smart on that as I need to be, but. The thing about it is so the argument that I've heard is then, well, if the Confederate flag is then offensive, then the American flag is just as offensive. No, the Confederate flag was the enemy of the American flag. They fought against the United States and lost. So it is a symbol of treason, it is a symbol of their own insurrection that is now associated again with race-based policy. So when you're talking
there is some validity to that, though. I can understand that argument because the American flag is a symbol of treason to Britain if you want to place it in that context. I don't think it is. I wouldn't agree with that. But
right,
for that argument,
country, it's not like I mean.
But we were part of Britain, so it was to our own country.
Right, but I mean to fly the American flag then in Britain would then be the equivalent of flying the Confederate flag here. In that, you see what I mean?
No, because the Confederate flag really isn't flown in the Union states. it's flown in the Confederate States.
Oh no,
So it would be the same as what we have now with, had we lost, it would be the same as if we were still flying the American flag all over the country.
right. Well, then the other thing, I've seen Confederate flags flying here in Pocatello, and for the most part, I will say this. Let me just
You've
say
got quite the collection of people up there.
we
Mormons and Confederates and
we have very few black people. We have a couple, but I'm sure that when they see the sea of whiteness with Confederate flags and Book of Mormons, they're probably a little intimidated. But the thing about it is, let me say this: when it comes to those that want to support the historical importance of the Confederate flag, I have no problem with. That's fine. Um, be proud of that heritage. You know what? And then I think it was Andrew Napolitano said it beautifully. People don't know Andrew Napolitano. He's a constitutional law professor. He is a former, not a Supreme Court justice, but a former circuit court justice. He's done a lot as far as Constitution.
isn't he one of the Fox and Friends?
He goes on there every once in a while, but don't make no mistake. This guy's an independent. He's not a Republican nor a Democrat. And there's things that I disagree with this guy on a lot. But in this particular time, he made perfect sense. And he said that if you want to fly the Confederate flag at your own private residence, go for it. And you know what? That's legal. It should be legal. You can fly it as high as you want. You can fly a swastika flag for all I care. You know what? But
Interesting fact, you can fly that flag here, you cannot fly that flag in Germany.
It's very true. So the thing about it is, he said, but then, of course, your neighbors can come to you and talk to you about it, like, bash you for it and call you ignorant and stupid or whatever in a myriad of things because it's their freedom of speech as well. You don't have a right to not be offended. That's the way the country goes. Now, when it comes to government buildings, when it comes to public spaces where like the Capitol building, which the flag, by the way, in South Carolina was put there, deadbolted on the flagpole in 1964 in opposition to civil rights. So therefore, probably needs to be taken down by now. So you have that in there. When you have that flag flying over a government building, it does not have a place there. It's because it's disenfranchising large portions of your population. And not just that, but the government itself is not an entity that is able to express their beliefs the same way that an individual can. Contrary to Citizens United, that money is free speech. Well, you know what? Religious government is not able to express its religious beliefs nor its own personal beliefs because it's supposed to facilitate the mass majority of the population, which has diverse opinions about things. So when you fly your own personal belief up there, South Carolina or Alabama, which Alabama promptly took theirs down because they were like, I don't even want to mess with that. Well, it's just in that conversation.
No. They ordered that it be removed. But there is they might have taken it down, but there was 1,000 people that showed up in support of continuing to fly the flag, claiming that the removal of the flag is a affront to their Southern heritage.
And that's what I don't get. It's not an affront to anything. In your own personal house, in your own personal time, you can fly. You can fly was it Old Reliable? Is that what they call it? The Old Reliable. You can fly that as often as you want. And you know what? And nobody within the government will have anything to say about it. You might get some nasty looks, but you know what? That's your right. But on a government building, man.
It's the beauty of America. You have the right to be an ignorant ass.
Right, yeah. You have a right to be a Republican. Oh, goodness. Jab. But the thing about it is, man, yeah, it's like, that's what people were confusing with this argument, is that they're like, well, I believe it's a symbol of my heritage. Well, you know what? There's people that believe it's a symbol of racism, and they're part of this country too. They are part of the discussion. And the moment that they feel disenfranchised, I mean, you have black people that are driving down General Lee Avenue. You have black people that are driving past that Capitol building every day, seeing the Confederate flag, which it was against them, was racist against them, right? And they're looking at that going, man, I'm not treated well by the police force. You see what I mean? It adds to that discussion. When they feel like they're being oppressed, you know what? Perhaps it's going to add some credence to that. Take it down and then talk about how racism's dead. Don't talk about how racism doesn't exist anymore while you're still flying the flag from 1964 in opposition to civil rights. Oh, racism's dead. Oh, don't mind that flag. It's just our heritage when we were racist. Stupid.
That's a good point. The heritage when you were racist, but I'm drawn between: are you more proud of your Southern heritage as a racist and a traitor, or are you more proud of your American heritage as a land of opportunity and freedom and the ability to embrace being a racist and a traitor?
Because I lived a good portion. That's a good question, by the way. I don't know. I would lean towards the second portion of that, but then again, I don't give two shits about the Southern flag.
Well, that's another, I guess, social topic that's coming up is, you have, I guess, a lot of the movement. There's a lot of things I've seen about, well, this is not my country. This is not my American flag. It's not my America.
Please.
And it's just, you say that stuff because you're in America and you have the right to say that. Like, the irony is just completely lost on all of them. And the fact that, well, I guess the counter argument is, well, I can go anywhere else and say it. I can go to Canada and I can say it. I can go to Great Britain and say it. Yeah, why? Why can you do that? Because we fucking won. That's why. Because we established a democracy that has now spread throughout the world. That's why. There is so much more to being an American than what people are realizing right now. So much, of course there's bad things. You can talk all day about, oh, we took the land from the Native Americans and cry and moan about that, or, oh, we had slaves when every other country in the world has slaves. Some people still have slaves. I mean, come on. Let's start putting things in perspective about what it actually means to be an American, what it means to have those rights, what it means to be able to go to other places and still have those rights.
Part of the problem that I noticed, because I spent a good portion of my life below the Mason-Dixon line, and there's this mentality, this culture that surrounds Southern culture, that the South will rise again, right? That's one of the big Confederate rally. The South will rise again. I think Charlie Daniels even has a song called "The South Will Rise Again."
And then the North will win again.
The thing about it is, Scott, is that it's open-ended, that statement. The South will rise again. Well, when? When it does. It's open-ended. There's no conclusion to it. So even though the South lost at this particular occasion, there still is the inevitable rise again of the South, that the South will not be totally and permanently defeated. So then,
that goes back to this whole litany of statements that are being made now because of everybody's displeasure with how dismal our government is being. The South will rise again. The founding fathers made room for revolution, and it's about time. There's another revolution coming. All of these empty threats that people say this stuff, they really don't know what that means. Let's talk about what happens when the South rises again. What happened the last time the South rose? Death.
Well, again, that one
people were on a battlefield shooting their family members to death. Why would you want that again?
That guy in South Carolina that shot up the church, he was in the flag of Rhodesia and also in a Confederate flag and all sorts of stuff. He had a picture of him burning the American flag. That's essentially what he wanted. He wanted to start that race war. So I think that's why it's open the discussion now of, should we fly these flags that have these sorts of ideologies that disenfranchise large portions of the population? It's not about your heritage. It's about, you know what? Maybe it's in good taste that we should probably take it down now.
And back to your point from what Napolitano was saying, was that if you would do that on your personal property, if
Right.
whatever his name was, the Charleston shooter, Dylan Roof. If he wants to, I can't say burn the American flag because I don't support that under any circumstance. But if he wants to wave the Rhodesian flag and wear it on his shirt, that's his right as an American to do
Right.
that.
As a dumb, ignorant American, he has that right.
Yes. But again, back to your point, state offices cannot do that. You can't go into Russia and have, go into some section of Russia that, maybe it's a little bit away from Moscow, some government building off in the middle of the BFE, and they're waving an American flag just because, hey, we really like America. America will rise again. They'll be shot on sight.
My ancestors were American.
yeah, we're arguing basically that exact same principle here.
Right.
There's no justification for the Confederate flag to continue on government buildings. If you want to be that guy and put it on the back of your 4x4 pickup truck when you go mudding and hunting, then fine, be that guy. Nobody's going to stop you from being that guy. Might not take anything you say seriously, but be that guy.
Obviously, there are people within this discussion that then take this reasonable principle that we've laid out right now about you can have it on your personal property, but you can't have it on government building. You have people within that principle that then take it too far, in that they're like, well, then let's just ban it altogether. Let's just ban it. Okay, those are crazy people, and not.
What fallacy is that? That is an argumental fallacy. I don't know if it's not slippery slope, is it?
Oh, I guess it could be a slippery slope that if we then allow it to not be flown on government buildings, that we could then. It's the same thing that they had with gay marriage. That.
So what's the red herring?
Oh, that's a good question. It's been a while.
Is the figurative expression referring to a logical fallacy in which a clue or piece of information is or intended to be misleading or distracting from the actual? Nah, that's not a red herring. I'll look it up. That is a fallacy, though, to jump from A to Z like that.
Right. But, I mean, there are people that exist within this discussion that feel that way, that it should be banned outright. Does that mean that that's actually what's happening? I think somebody tried to say that that they were going to take it off of actual Confederate flag, like battlefields, like take it off of Gettysburg or something like that. I don't know. Which, you know what? I don't know. I don't know on that one. Because I'm not as well versed as whether or not they're doing that. But I'm sure there are people that want and support that. The question is, does the majority of the people then support that action? You can't. You can dislike portions of things like that, but still support the overall aspect that the flag needs to come down on government buildings. There's a middle ground in there, and that's what people don't realize when discussing politics. Is it's always absolute with politics. It's always black and white. You're either red team or blue team. There's no middle ground anymore, and that's the problem with politics. If I say that I support the flag being taken down, then immediately I'm a liberal. You know what I mean? And that's not the case, because there's a lot of conservatives that want the flag down as well.
Right.
We're just in the middle ground with things that we need to kind of focus on that. So, man,
there's a lot of fallacies. Like, I don't have time to go through all these.
Well, you have, of course, the straw man argument, which is a frequently used sort of thing when you're talking in political discourse or debate. You also have red herring, which I can't remember. I remember it from when I was in like speech or something like that.
Well, I thought red herring was just one type, but there is a bunch of red herring types, like ad hominem attacks. Those are red herrings.
Right. That if you're attacking somebody's personal character to discredit their argument, that
Right.
So if Scott was to say that he had a poll that pulled up that said 80% of people like bologna sandwiches, and then I was like, but Scott's obese, and then it's like it has no bearing on the poll itself. It's just to discredit. I'm not saying you're actually obese, man.
That one's actually called it's under ad hominem. It's called poisoning the well, where adverse information about a target is presented with the intention of discrediting everything the target person says.
So calling the president a Kenyan Muslim terrorist would be an example of poisoning the well.
Yep. It's a fallacy. It doesn't get anywhere. Anyways, we talk about that anyway. Anyway, the logic you presented that people are, I guess, presenting in their argument, that it's an illogical argument because it's
Right.
what's.
It's either or.
I feel
It's
really dumb now. What's the other word for fallacy? It's a failing argument. I don't know.
you know it's
Not that smart.
this is where the pompousness comes in. We're like we're not quite experts on this, but
That must
if
sound like I am, anyways.
yeah, interesting fact. Spell out fallacy and fallacious, and you'd be surprised that they're like almost related to each other.
What you people do in Idaho is your business.
We were fallacious with our fallacies.
All right, let's move on. We got 10 minutes to talk about some other stuff. And another, I guess, major thing that happened is Greece is collapsing on itself. Might be moving into the realm of bankruptcy, falling out of the EU. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on with that. Like, they elected this, the new leader. I don't remember his name. Starts with a TS. It's really weird. But anyways, they elected this guy because he had a plan for fixing their problems. His plan was to fix the budget and to resolve tensions with Germany and the EU. And he's not done that. So he's failed at what he promised he was going to do. And now they're facing bankruptcy, and nobody wants to help them.
Well, the thing about it is he was a little bit more hardline, if I remember correctly. He was a little bit more hardline as far as his stance with the EU, and that he was essentially going to renegotiate a deal with them in regards to paying down their debt, because Greece right now has austerity measures. I believe they were already bankrupt and then borrowed a bunch of money from the EU in order to sustain themselves. Part of the problem is Greece has no taxes. They're a very corrupt government, and yeah, they have a lot of issues, and no reasonable way to fix it. They had a lot of their investors, like their actual, like, when they tried to do some sort of tax policy, they had a lot of their corporate people just leave. They had tax havens and stuff like that out of Cyprus, I believe what it was. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so this guy got in the office and he said he was going to renegotiate the deal, and of course then Angela Merkel and the EU were essentially like, no dice, Greece, you're playing by our rules because you're playing with our money, and so that's kind of the crisis I understand out of it. Clearly, and you've pulled up some stuff about them being
What really strikes me in this conversation is that it comes down to a 1.6 billion euro debt replacement, which, what with conversion, I don't even know how the euro stands against the dollar right now. It used to be a little bit stronger.
it was like
So
1.35 or something like that to the
okay,
dollar.
so still 1.6 billion. I mean, that in euro, that's a good chunk of change. We'll call it 2 billion to be safe. Um, we have a presidential candidate that could pay that off for them. We have a list of about 50 different businessmen that could literally just write a check to them, and it wouldn't be an issue for them at all. But instead, we're going to let a country collapse. If Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, or specifically Bill Gates recently, is so intent on being a philanthropist with his money, giving away and helping people out, why not go save a country for $1.6 billion? Seems like a logical investment.
I figured I'd do some fact checking, by the way. The US dollar is equal to 0.89 euro.
Okay, so it's a little bit weaker still. So yeah, about 1.92 billion.
Yeah, the thing about it is, the way that the EU is approaching this is that this money was fronted to Greece in order to take care of their problems. Yet they have not done any reform to ensure that this sort of crisis does not take place again. They have not reformed their government. They have not reformed their economic policies. And so, and the thing about it is rapidly running out of the money that they were given. And so their repayment plan, they're at risk of going default on it. And so because of that, the guy's like, hey, let's renegotiate this deal. We shouldn't have this problem. But then, the EU is trying to look out for their own particular interest, and Greece is dragging down the euro. It's dragging down the European Union. And so said that Greece is kind of flirted with the idea of leaving the EU. That's been on the table. I don't know.
Well, two of the things I just saw when I was pulling that up is one, all eyes are on Angela Merkel, um, Germany's chancellor, prime minister, whatever the hell they call it, the leader of Germany, because it's her model that everybody's using to enforce these austerity measures.
Well, she's isn't she like the de facto leader of the EU essentially?
The way that there was, I don't know if she's like the de facto leader. Germany does have the biggest economy in the euro or the EU, so I don't know if that makes her the de facto leader or not. I really haven't looked into this very much.
America, if you have the money in America, you're a de facto leader apparently. Hey, Donald Trump, want a job?
Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, president, vice president, right there for life. It'd be a terrible idea. Anyways, and if they do pull out of the EU, what next? There is some speculation that they would turn to Russia to help them out to fix their problems. Which then does that mean that they become? Are they no longer our allies at that point if they turn to Russia?
Here's the thing. Russia is going through its own economic crisis because of some of the sanctions we've put on them, to where that they are now trying to fish themselves out of it by aligning themselves with people like China, trying to like open trade deals with China, which is why the TPP, I think, was initially conceived, was to combat that. I kind of looked a little bit into it, but that exists. Then they tried to create ties with North Korea, and then of course now if Greece then becomes buddy with Russia, it's just going to drag their own economy down, and it's not in their best interest. So while maybe Greece would then align themselves with Russia in respects to this neo-Cold War that we have going on, but I mean, look at the rogues gallery that Russia then has. China is its only strong ally in that sort of investment, and they're failing at that because China won't work with the United States more than China because of our free market policy, our lack of regulation, if you will. So they're more willing to work with us because there's more incentive to. Russia is not quite so much.
Indeed. So we're not going to go too deep on that. As a final topic in the last couple of minutes that we have going on here, did you know Avril Lavigne has Lyme disease?
Wow. Well, yeah, I didn't know she had Lyme disease, but that's crazy. Lyme disease is kind of come out to the forefront. I know somebody that has Lyme disease, and the struggles she's had to go through it, and then of course, what's her name? Hannah. What was that? Kathleen Hanna of Bikini Kill has it as well. Or Riot Girl.
A person and a thing. I have no idea what you're talking about. Bikini Kill?
Okay, let me explain. Kathleen Hanna was the face of this movement in the 90s called the Riot Girl movement. This kind of ultra-feminist, girl power, sort of grungy rock music, to where when they would have their concerts of Bikini Kill. She was also in La Tigre, I think is what it was called. And
I am familiar with that.
And the Julie Ruin. She's associated with that. But the thing is in her concerts, she would make the males stand in the back because women would be first for a change or something. So it was really this ultra feminist movement that took place, and to the point where she was friends with Cobain. They both came out of the Seattle grunge scene, and to the point where she influenced the title "Smells Like Teen Spirit." So she's in that sort of environment, but not recently, but over the past decade or so, she'd been diagnosed with Lyme disease, to where it was debilitating to the point where she couldn't tour anymore, and that's why.
Yeah, Avril Lavigne was saying she came out with it, I guess, in April, talking about it. But the diagnosis process for Lyme disease apparently is not easy, And there was, I guess, a lot of doctors. Now, keep in mind, this is Avril Lavigne. She got a lot of money, so she's not going to cheap doctors to get this stuff. So she has all these doctors that's basically saying, well, are you depressed? Do you have chronic fatigue syndrome? Like trying to give her all this other stuff until somebody finally got Lyme disease. And she had been, I guess, bedridden for an entire month with it. Like she couldn't even get out of bed because it hurt so bad. But she's finally gotten treatment or whatever. But that leads into a whole discussion on the American medical system that we are not going to touch tonight.
Yeah, that's a can of worms that we definitely do not want to go down tonight. But we assure you, ladies and gentlemen, we will delve down that rabbit hole very shortly. We will swallow that pill, and we will take you on a journey you will never forget. Kind of like the magic school bus going to the human body. I've never forgot that episode, and my mind is still blown. I'm like, that's what my inside of my pancreas looks like? So, Man, I do want to give a quick shout out for those that are obviously watching this in the video format or video format. You can see this mic here. You can probably still hear me if I'm not getting quieter, so I'm going to kind of lean into it like that. But this mic here was donated by one only Jason Russell, a good friend of mine and a good friend of the podcast. So just wanted to give him a thank you. If you're hearing me in the beautiful sounds of my voice, it is because of this glorious mic. So 2 thumbs up. I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head. Of course,
there were just so many big topics. We didn't have time for any of the little stuff that happened throughout the week. It all kind of pales in comparison. So,
which, congratulations to my LGBTQ brethren out there. The fight is definitely, the tide has turned. You can now legally get married, and that is awesome, and it's cool in my book. Now we just got to make sure that we can maintain equality, So
I gave you the T, LGBT. I'm not giving you the Q.
It's one of those things that it's really hard to, like, what is the Q in that? You know what I mean? Apparently there's 57 designations that it spans beyond LGBTQ, that there's 57 other designations in there. I don't really know all of them.
I think we should have just cut it off at the B, LGB. It was good back then. You got the message.
Right, yeah. We're starting to cut planets out, ladies and gentlemen. Pluto is no longer a planet, obviously, so now you got to start shaving out them 57 designations. We mean that, of course, affectionately, not offensively. LGBT.
But if we're doing one letter per designation, there's only 26 letters.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I don't know if they're throwing numerals in there, Scott, to get to 57. If they're throwing some Klingon, I don't know. But man, it sounds so offensive. The liberal in me is going, no, James, no. What you're saying could potentially.
I really like the comment you threw out, because you just said it sounded offensive. The comment you threw out earlier about you don't have the right to not be offended.
Right.
That. I think that one's going to stick with me for a while. So, anyways, that is it for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure to check us out on www.polypompous.com, our website where we host these things. We are also on Twitter and Facebook at Polypompous.
Tweet. I love it when people tweet, man. I get all tweeter-pated and whatnot. I say that, and Scott does the same look every time, just shakes his head and goes, man, what the hell is this guy doing to himself, saying words like that? You know what? Like, almost like he's afraid to be associated with me in daylight when I say tweeter-pated. But, I own
just a little bit.
Yeah, own that shit. Tweet me. I will tell you all about my fascination with being tweeter-pated. So, yeah.
And I am in Astronomy 151 right now, so I can very soon be able to talk intelligently about, well, semi-intelligently, about the universe.
Nice. Yeah, well, you'll be like our own resident Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Maybe not. But
Space is made out of stars and shit. That's my Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's stars and shit. How you doing, Richard?
Terrible Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's probably the worst one I've ever seen.
He's morphed into, like, kind of like a Lando Calrissian figure in my brain. Like he's just gonna pop out of the spaceship and be like, "Hey, Han, old buddy, you old pirate," and he's gonna be wearing a cape and shit. Like that's what I imagine. I'm going like nerdy with shit. Sorry, guys. Star Wars, ladies and gentlemen. So with that, I just want to say to you lovely people out there, you beautiful, beautiful people, have a glorious rainbow-filled week, I guess.
Take care. Keep thinking.